So we are going to start shading. We're going to start figuring out how light molds around a three-dimensional surface, because that's really the key to learning how to draw and make things accurate and look three-dimensional, is that understanding of light. The most basic of the forms is a parallelogram. In this case, I am going to use this block of wood. Represents a parallelogram. It doesn't really matter whether it's a cube like this or a rectangular parallelogram. The basic way that light affects it is pretty much the same. So we're going to use this to look at. Light is going to be coming from above. I'm going to put this out on my desk here, and light is going to be coming from above. So that's going to be my lightest plane. This will be my intermediate plane, and this is going to be my shadow plane on this side, just because of where it's going to sit. But just wanted you to see what we're working with. So I'm going to set that out there. When I draw a cube or a parallelogram, I generally will start with the corner that's closest to me. And in this case, I made one that's 2 inches. You can make whatever works for you. And then I'm going to look at the bottom edge. I'm just going to use my pencil, and I'm going to hold it out in front of me and look at the tilt and try to duplicate that tilt. And it's not a ton. It's not a big shift. It's just a little bit of an angle to the left. And then I want to make, if we were truly doing this in 2-point perspective, it would be a little bit of a close at this end. It would be not quite 2 inches. It'd be a little bit smaller because this end is slightly farther away. But I've got this parallelogram set up pretty close to facing forward. So I'm just gonna basically go with a 2x2 where this left side is raised a little bit up from the left one in comparison to the tabletop, or comparison to the bottom line here. Now, I can see a lot of this side. I barely see any of this side. It's got a huge angle. And I can take my pencil and I can hold it out in front of me and get an idea. And it is a little less than half. So if I look at this and I pull it to just a little less than half of this front, this top edge is about right there. So it's not going to be 2 inches out. It's going to be definitely much less of a plane that I can see here. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. I'm going to take a look at how much of that I can see and give myself an approximate 1, 2. So again, I'm going to go to this halfway, pull it back a little bit, and then find about half of that, which is about like this. And that is all I can see of the side. And so I'm going to kind of set my side margin kind of right through there. But I do want to make it parallel, so I got to make sure that this line and this line don't tilt in different directions, which they do ever so slightly. So I'm going to fix that. And this line and this line need to be pretty much on. So I'm looking at this side of the ruler. It's easier for me to match these two. So this is going to be my parallelogram here. And then I have to think about the shadow that is being cast. And it's not a straight line. It's and it fades out. So it kind of does this sort of thing to me. All right, so I have 3 sides. Top side gets the most light, but I'm gonna grab this real quick. Obviously, my paper is whiter than this is. So the first thing that I need to do is establish what is my lightest value that I'm gonna be able to get with the pencils that I have. I am using a fairly dark pencil. I've got a 6B here. I think I'll change that out. So I'm going to use a mid pencil. I'm going to use a B. B is a lot like your number 2 pencil, the yellow pencil, you know, that you guys kind of grew up with in school. It's kind of a mid-value pencil. And I'm scooting way back. Notice that I am not holding it here. When you hold it up close, you get too heavy, you get too dark. So I scoot way back, and I'm going to keep my shading pretty much in the same direction. That'll keep it smoother. And you'll notice that I am going very short. My movement of my pencil, if this tells you anything, is about half of the width of a thumbnail. It's a very short movement of my pencil. It's called the pencil stroke. So this is the easiest of the forms to shade and draw, simply because the surfaces are flat. That flat surface gets an even amount of light. The front surface is a little bit darker than that. I can use the same pencil, but with just a little bit of added pressure. And this is not quite dark enough, so I have a couple of options here. I can either change pencils to a darker pencil, or I can go back in a different direction and add another layer. And just cross my stroke back through the area. Again, pretty short strokes. It's really tempting when you get into a box like this to like really go with long pencil strokes. But what you will find is those lines will always show and you won't be able to hide them. So if you can really develop some fine motor control and work on a shorter pencil stroke, you'll be able to hide much better. All right, and my third side of this box is pretty dark. And I'm actually just going to use the same pencil, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scoot up. So instead of holding it back here, I'm going to scoot up so that now I can put more pressure. And this side of the box, interestingly enough, has a little bit darker shadow down here at the very base. And the reason is bounced light. In this particular place where I have this cube sitting, it's sitting on a white page. And the light bouncing off the white page is bouncing a little bit of light into the shadow, into this side. It's not huge, but there is a little bit brighter area in the upper part of this side than there is at the base of this side. And so once I've kind of established my three values here, now I'm going to go to a slightly darker pencil. I'm going to grab a 2B, I think. You could grab a 4B or something else, and I do have those. And I'm going to add just a little bit more of this darker value down here at the base. And so you can see you get this darker shadow here and a little bit of this bounced light up in the upper part where it's bouncing back in there. The shadow on the paper is pretty close to this. It's not a huge difference. And I can already tell I need to move this back line back just a smidge because a little bit of shadow is falling behind. And unlike the cube, the shadow does not have a super sharp defined edge. So as I create this shadow over here, I want my edges to have a little bit of a blur, a little bit of a fuzz. So instead of having a really sharp line, at least wise here in the back, front has a little bit cleaner line right here. And then as it gets further away from the cube, away from the object, the shadow begins to lose its definition. And just like before, I turn my book a lot when I work, just because it's easier to draw certain things if I've got the angle right. And it's going to fade out. As it gets further and further away. The one thing hopefully you did notice is that I didn't use my fingers. I don't smear my work with my fingers. Your pencil is great at actually creating all those different values, and learning how to use them to their best benefit only happens when you don't smear. So we are not going to be smearing with our fingertips at all. So you work on your three, most light, medium light, in the shadow, and what happens to the form, and how you use this kind of thing. There are a lot of things that we draw that are based off of parallelograms. For instance, a car. It's two parallelograms. And then you flesh it out. And I'm not really drawing any specific car, but it's how you approach drawing something. You look at the underlying form that's within it and start trying to put that together. And what does it look like? Do you want the front longer? move it out a little bit. But it's still a box on a box.